It was a warm afternoon in Oakland, California, in 1951, a time when neighborhoods still felt safe, and the idea of a child going missing was nearly unthinkable. Two young brothers, Roger and Luis, were playing together at their local park. Roger, 10, was the responsible big brother, always keeping a watchful eye on his 6-year-old sibling. They had no idea that this day would forever splinter their lives into a heartbreaking before and after. While they played, a mysterious woman appeared, her most striking feature, a green bandana tied tightly around her head. She approached with a kind smile and a sweet offer. Candy? Luis, young and innocent, didn't hesitate. The woman offered to take him to the store to buy some, and just like that, he followed her. Roger, ever the big brother, trailed after them for a few blocks before that creeping sense of dread started gnawing at him. Something felt wrong. He stopped, turned around, and sprinted home. When Roger burst through the front door and told their mother what had happened, panic overtook her. Without hesitation, she ran back to the park, but it was already too late. Luis and the woman were gone, vanished without a trace. What followed was a frantic attempt to alert authorities. But this was the early 1950s. There were no Amber Alerts, no GPS trackers, no surveillance cameras. To make matters worse, the family had recently immigrated from Puerto Rico, and their mother, frantic and heartbroken, spoke little English. That language barrier delayed everything. Eventually, police launched a large-scale search. Local soldiers joined the effort. Even the Coast Guard scoured the bay. For 9 city blocks, they searched, door to door, street to street. Luis's face made local headlines, but no clues surfaced. The woman in the green bandana had evaporated into thin air. The mother refused to give up. Every day she walked to the police station asking the same question, "Any news?" And every day the officers gave the same answer. No. Weeks passed, then months, then years. Her visits became less frequent. First weekly, then monthly, then just once a year. But her hope never faded. Officers began to recognize her by sight. She didn't have to speak. They'd just shake their heads gently, silently communicating that the trail was still cold. But she carried on. She kept a worn newspaper clipping about Luis's disappearance in her wallet, and a framed photo of his small face on the wall of her home, always hoping for a miracle. What became of Luis? For decades, no one knew. But slowly, fragments of his life after the kidnapping would be pieced together, though the full picture would not come until long after his mother had passed away. Here's what we know. After leaving the park, Luis and the woman flew across the country to the East Coast. There, Luis was somehow adopted by a couple. He grew up believing that he had simply been given up for adoption as a baby. His new parents never told him otherwise, and by all accounts, he lived a typical American life. He joined the Marines, served 2 tours in Vietnam, returned home, became a firefighter, married, and had children. He built a life, one with no idea that it was founded on a stolen identity. Meanwhile, back in California, Luis's mother grew old, still haunted by the memory of her missing child. In 2005, at 92 years old, she passed away, never knowing what had become of her son. Her hope had outlived her. It seemed the story of Luis had ended in sorrow. Until, in 2020, a spark, unexpected and accidental, set off a series of events that would finally bring truth to light. Enter Alita, a 63-year-old woman living in the U.S. Like millions of others who had taken an interest in family history, she decided to take a mail-in DNA test. What she got back wasn't just a peek into her genetic makeup. It was the crack in a decades-old case. Among her DNA matches was a man she didn't recognize. They shared 22% of their DNA, a substantial match, likely a close family member. Curious, she messaged him through the site, but he never responded. She shrugged it off. 4 years went by. One night, watching a documentary about missing children, Alita thought back to that strange DNA match and her own family's whispered legend. A story passed down about a young uncle who had been taken as a boy in 1951 and never seen again. Something clicked. She began digging, searching the internet for that DNA match's name. She found a photo, then another, then more. And the face she was looking at, the man's face, looked like a grown-up version of the boy in her family's black and white photo albums. Could it be? Could this man be her lost uncle? Alita took her findings to the police. Shocked but intrigued, the local department reopened the case. Then the FBI got involved. So did the California Department of Justice. Together, they began to quietly investigate, and eventually, they knocked on a door on the East Coast. When they spoke to the man, Luis, they gently told him, "We think you may have been kidnapped in 1951. Luis was stunned. Kidnapped? He had never heard such a thing. His entire life, he had believed he was adopted legally. To be told at nearly 80 years old that he was, in fact, abducted as a child. It was nearly too much to process. Still, he agreed to a DNA test. The results confirmed the impossible. Luis was, indeed, the long-lost boy taken from a California park 7 decades earlier. His DNA matched Alita's and that of other surviving family members. After 73 years, the mystery was solved. Shortly after, Luis boarded a plane back to California, the same state he had been taken from all those years ago. There, waiting for him, were relatives he had never met, and some he barely remembered. And then came the moment no one could believe, a reunion with Roger, his older brother, now in his 80s. The last time they had seen each other, they were children. Now they embraced as old men. A life ripped apart by a stranger's cruel actions had come full circle. But justice? That remains elusive. No one knows who the woman in the green bandana really was. Luis doesn't remember her clearly. He was only 6. His adoptive parents have passed away, and any trail to her identity has long since gone cold. What motivated her? Was it human trafficking? A personal vendetta? Mental illness? We may never know. But Luis's story reminds us of something powerful. Hope has no expiration date. Even when decades go by, even when answers feel impossible, sometimes truth has a way of coming home.